Okay, thank you, Vice Chancellor. Now we will go to our 2012-2013 system budget proposal, item 2.2, Vice Chancellor Troy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President Himmelstein and board members. Before I get right to the 12-13 system request, I would like to update you on a couple items in regard to the 11-12 budget. Just late last week, we did get approval from the legislature, as we requested, to push the trigger fee increase, if that trigger is pulled in December, back from starting in the winter term, which we felt would be not implementable by the colleges, back to the summer. So we were able to work with the legislature and with the Department of Finance to get that done, and we are awaiting the governor's signature on that, but we believe that will get his approval as well. Also, I would like to broadly make a statement about the potential for those triggers to be pulled, because that's a question I get daily. We certainly don't have our own unique revenue projection system in the Chancellor's office, but like you, I read the news in the newspaper, I read the Department of Finance bulletins. We know, for example, that the estimates of quarterly growth from the first 2 quarters of this year have been revised downward since the time the budget was approved. We've seen slow receipts, by and large, coming in through the Comptroller's office. So certainly all the news that we've received since the enactment of the budget have been on the negative side.
Dan, excuse me, didn't I just read, I thought it was last week, there was a slight uptick, though, in the latest receipts?
That's right. The Comptroller reported in August that they were about $140 million ahead of their what they had anticipated for August, but they were more than $500 million below in July. So on the whole, we're negative. So again, all I can do at this point is caution districts to be very prudent in developing their budgets and make sure they have options available to implement those reductions very quickly should the need arise.
Excuse me, Member Malamud.
So I have a question. If the fees were supposed to increase and they're not going to until months later, does that affect our total funding from the state in another way?
Yes, well, part of the reason that we were willing to advocate to push the fee increase back was that we heard from many colleges that they did not think that the policy was implementable. Therefore, they would not have received a lot of the revenue that the governor and the legislature had assumed anyway. The Tier 1 cut, which is relevant to the fee increase, is a $30 million reduction. And I think the assumption of the policymakers was that that increase to $46 would backfill that cost. And what we heard from most colleges, I wouldn't say it's unanimous, but from most colleges, is that they just didn't think they were going to be able to collect those fees. Many students would have already paid their fees, or they didn't think they could have the fees changed in time to implement it and do supplemental billings of students and all that administrative hardship. So I don't think it effectively has a big change on the districts.
Thank you.
We're just talking about next year's proposal, right? And then the next item, we're going to talk about the impact of this year.
Or the past few years, really.
Because I had a question about, because districts now have to pass their budgets by September 15th, right?
That's right.
And so we, factoring in the trigger, I wanted to get a sense of how that's going to impact the system. We, I'm also on the board at Pasadena City, we just passed our budget last Wednesday, and we budgeted a reduction based on the anticipated reduction. I wanted to see how that's echoing throughout the system as well. Are other districts doing that as well?
Yeah, well, we had a couple of budget workshops in August. We did one in Northern California, another down at Citrus College. And so we had an opportunity to meet with a lot of business leaders, I should say CBOs and trustees throughout the state. And I think the story they're telling is very much what you're saying, that they're assuming that those triggers are going to be pulled, and they're planning right now for that worst case scenario, assuming that, figuring that they could probably add some courses back in if the triggers are not pulled. So I do think there's a lot of caution out there.
And I'd be interested in hearing, are there any districts that are really on the financial edge that to absorb that change would lead to major impacts?
Well, we definitely have a few colleges that are struggling a bit. I think a lot of them are our smaller colleges, and that's part of the reason why, as we presented to the board in July, that we've decided to implement the workload reductions of the budget in a way that exempts some of the smaller districts. If you have roughly 3,000 full-time equivalents or less, you will be exempted from that workload reduction. So the larger colleges will take on that load for them. So that was certainly part of our concern when we implemented that proposal.
Member McDougall?
Dan, I wanted to be sure I understood what you said about the fees. Did you say the fees will not increase for the winter term, but will not increase until the summer?
That's correct. If that Tier 1 trigger is pulled, pursuant to the Budget Act, that was supposed to trigger a fee increase from $36 to $46 as of the winter term. With this latest change approved last week, again, is pending the governor's signature, that if the trigger is pulled, the fee increase would not take effect until summer.
Because I could understand the difficulty involved in going back and trying to collect for the fall, but with the time that exists between the present and the registration for the winter term, there would not seem to be a problem, except in maybe some publications, but registration or pre-registration, at least my understanding, would not have taken place to any extent at this time. I'm just a little surprised at that.
Well, the problem is that if the fee were increased for sure as of today, I think colleges could implement it. But the problem is that it won't be pulled until roughly December 15th. That gives colleges only a couple of weeks to make the adjustment.
That's understandable then. I didn't realize that.
Members, excuse me, we're going to have to take a break. We are having some technical difficulties with our recording, and since we are broadcast out to all 112 sites, we need to try to fix the sound recording. So let's take a little break, and we'll resume as soon as the technical folks tell us we're back on the air. Okay, members, if we could reconvene. Okay, I think we have solved our technical difficulties, and so Vice Chancellor Troy, please resume.
Thank you. I think I'll just, in case there's any further clarification, just let me make sure everyone knows how the trigger fee worked. So if the Department of Finance makes a determination that revenues are not keeping pace at a specified level with the budget assumptions, different tiers of budget reductions can be enacted on or before December 15th. So the first tier of reductions approved in the authority provided for in the budget would involve a $30 million cut to the community colleges and a fee increase from 36 to 46. So it's not until December 15th or so that colleges would know that that fee would kick in. So that's the problem that was by the colleges. December 15th to second or third week of January, simply not enough time to implement that fee increase. So that's what we advocated for pushing that off, and the legislature agreed.
Dan, does that fee go back to the colleges or just to the general fund?
It essentially, the general fund receives all the savings, and it's just a way for the colleges to backfill that cut, just like the $10 increase we got for this year as well.
Any other questions on that? Please, Member McDougall.
Just a comment. So, Dan, in effect, what that means is there will be a cut of that magnitude that the colleges will have to absorb. And what is the magnitude of the cut that will be absorbed?
For that first tier, the cut is $30 million.
$30 million.
And there's a potential second tier as well of revenues are very slow of an additional $72 million. So in addition to the $300 or so million we're looking at already for this year, there's a potential for another $102 million out there.
So in effect, the system will not get supported for the amount that the fee was anticipated to bring in. So the entire loss, if you will be absorbed by our institutions. And that really is, it's rather a shame, because if, it would seem to me that there's sufficient data upon which to base a decision, that if a decision were made, as Vice Chancellor Troy said earlier, about now, the institutions could go out and save collectively $13 million that they will lose because they would be able to collect the fees.
Right, but
And
under our current,
it's really unfortunate that that can't be corrected. I mean, there's a lot at stake here.
I would agree, under our current funding model, that's how we operate. Okay, please proceed.
Okay. If there's no more questions on the triggers or 1112, I'll move right into the 1213.
Let me just say,
system request.
Chancellor, the last increase that we did, the $10, that one actually was directed or semi-directed back to our funding pot, correct?
Yes, and this, if we went from 26 to 36.
Right.
I well remember once in testifying in front of the legislative committee, they said, what is your opinion of a fee increase? And I said, well, if it's gradual and moderate and we get the money,
Right.
this money will go to us. In other words, when I say it goes to the general fund, but it's credited to us. So if it goes up to $46 starting in the summer of 2012, we will get that increase in money. And there's a portion of the budget that says this is for the fee increase. But of course, as Dan so ably explained, and by the way, I want to compliment Dan and Eric and Marlene Garcia. They worked in the Capitol with the staff explaining how chaotic it would be if the colleges did not get a word till December 15th, and many of the students would have already registered for the winter term, and then they were trying to go back and get that $10. People would want to change their schedule. Maybe people would, if they couldn't get in touch with the student, are you going to then forfeit the student's enrollment? All of that was going to be so chaotic, and that's why the colleges said we would rather postpone the fee. But when we get a fee increase, it doesn't just go into the general pot. It may go into the general treasury, but we're given credit for it. So we've made it very clear that we don't want to be, financing other parts of the state's budget on the students' back, which essentially is what we do. Now, of course, we have a very generous financial aid program. The Board of Governors waives all tuition, and about 40% of our students meet that criterion. And so, and then we have Pell Grants and other things. So when we do raise the fees, the poorest students get their tuition covered, whether it's $36 a unit or $46 a unit. It's not that we get real excited about the raise of fees, but even at $46, we would still be the lowest tuition in the nation. But I don't want us to lose that title if we can keep from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Vice Chancellor.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll present the 1213 system budget proposal. This budget proposal was developed in consultation with a budget work group, which met 2 times. We also presented the proposal through the consultation council, and we did brief the Board of Governors in July on the discussions of the work group and council as discussions were at that point. If this budget request has a theme, it is a restoration. The colleges have taken major hits over the past 3 budgets. We lost 8% of our budget in the 2009-10 year. We lost a little over 6% in the 11-12 budget, with the potential for trigger cuts, as discussed earlier, making that even worse. And we've not received a COLA since the 07-08 fiscal year. Those lost COLAs over time we estimate to be a reduction in purchasing power of about 13.5% for our colleges. So this proposal we present today is very straightforward. we're asking simply for restoration of the severe reductions that we've taken over the past few years. This is a proposal that would essentially make the system whole as intended through law. The total amounts for these three key areas are roughly $1.5 billion. We know that that's a lot of money, and it will take years to get to that level. But our challenges are very large right now. The economy, I think, cannot expect to have a sustained recovery without a skilled workforce, and the community colleges are the best positioned entity in the state to train that workforce. So we have big needs, and I think we should make a big request. In terms of the details, we are requesting restoration of the categorical hits that we took in 2009-10. That's a $313 million cut. We've had that cut sustained for the budget since then. Student success is obviously a key focus that we're working on right now. We'll hear from an update on the task force later, but it's hard to conceive of supporting student success without these key programs that help students achieve their goals. We are also requesting the backfill of foregone COLAs. That would total $793 million. As I mentioned earlier, the loss of purchasing power since the 07-08 year is over 13%. Costs for colleges continue to go up and up. So this lack of a COLA indicates that colleges are going to need to make cuts elsewhere in their program and degrade their services. So we think it's very important, once again, in terms of supporting student success, that we get these increases that were owed in statute. The third major component of the request is enrollment growth, or as I prefer to call it, restoration of the workload cuts that were received over the prior couple of budgets. That totals about $377 million. So again, taken together, that request is just shy of $1.5 billion. We think this is a very straightforward request. You know that we don't have a lot of small proposals in here. We're not asking for new positions for the Chancellor's office. We thought before we did that, we wanted to make clear that we need to have our base program restored, and that the hits we've taken over the last few years have just been too large to ignore. So we've put forward a very straightforward request in that regard. I will note one caveat to that is that we will be monitoring the recommendations from the Student Success Task Force. To the extent that they have final approved recommendations that may entail some budget changes or some requests, we can then make supplemental requests to Department of Finance and to the legislature at that time if that's appropriate. So we'll monitor that as the situation goes along. I did want to point out also that we did put in some items for areas of one-time expenditures should they have some Prop 98 settle-up money or resources like that to fund. Deferred maintenance and equipment is our number one priority there. That's about $282 million. And also the backlog of mandates, unpaid mandate claims from prior years. The controllers identified that as of April as of $330 million. So we do detail that for as part of our request. So with that, I'd ask for approval of the system request.
Dan, first of all, I want to thank you and Eric and your staff for this. I'm actually personally quite pleased that this request is bold. And I also want to thank Member McDougall for actually pushing a bold proposal. I think we're all aware of the realities of the budgets and what the legislature and governor is dealing with. Having said that, I think it's reflective of our understanding of the needs of our campuses and our students. So I think it's a very good statement that we do that. One question, and tell me if I'm right. These dollars that you identify here are restoration, but our overall budget for our system is somewhere in the area of $6 billion or so.
Yeah,
is that
about
still accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
About 5.9.
And that's general fund. It doesn't count local bond dollars or anything like that.
Not capital outlay dollars, but it does include fees and local.
Right, so it doesn't include any state capital outlay dollars and/or local.
No local
dollars.
capital outlay.
But it does include property tax.
It does include
Right,
property
right.
tax.
No,
and fee
understand that,
collection.
understand that. Okay, questions from members? Mr. McDougall?
Just a comment, I think the presentation that Vice Chancellor Troy had for us is really exceptional in succinctly presenting as complex an area as I think there is. But it's very powerful in getting across how severe the cuts have been to the California community colleges over the last 3 years. It also is very powerful in demonstrating the ability of the California community colleges to contribute to the state's recovery that is vital to changing the present situation. And I think third, makes it clear that this type of an investment is fundamental if we are going to be able to get out from under the very, very challenging economic situation that we're in. I know this does not speak directly to the item, but I would suggest that this report be distributed to every district in the state. I don't think that there is as full an awareness among our colleges as there needs to be as to what has happened. I mean, I know they're suffering severely and they're aware of the consequences, but this presents a big picture and the ability to articulate it in the communities throughout the state. And in addition to the report, I would recommend that perhaps a sample public release be prepared, that the districts could decide how to make it work for their individual situation. But I think the people in California need to know, these are, if you will, their colleges. They need to know that the capacity is there to contribute to the state and what is happening. And I just feel the report is so well done and quite powerful that its broad distribution in this case would be extremely helpful. So,
I would ask the Chancellor and maybe Paul Feast to comment on that.
Well, we would certainly be happy to distribute this and make a note of that, if you will, Vice Chancellor Troy, and perhaps in consultation with Vice Chancellor Feast, you might think of ways to communicate it in bold, stark ways. As I said, one of the things we did in the press conference was try to say to the state of California and that these cuts are, and I've often used the phrase, it's a tragedy for students who get turned away, but it's a tragedy for the state. Because if we're not training personnel, there's no question that our economy is going to suffer in the future. All of the trends that Public Policy Institute, for instance, indicated that by 2020, we're going to need 41% of our workforce should possess a bachelor's degree. At the rate we're going, only 35% will. That just means, and I've always felt like that the economy of California, at times when we really pushed forward, it was as a result of the innovative and bright ideas that came from our personnel. And if we don't train our personnel, and also if you look at, and Vice Chancellor Troy and Vice Chancellor Perry are going to talk about this, but if you look at certain of the trends that occur in the state, our ethnic makeup is changing, and yet often we are failing to educate these ethnic groups that are rising in number. And so we've got a problem in the state of California, and I don't like to, be a Jeremiah or a Cassandra going around always with a long face, because we do the best we can with what money we've got. But I think it wasn't long ago I was asked to speak to the Sacramento Rotary Club, and I talked about the state of higher education in California, and I had to be blunt in saying, we're not going in the right direction. For a state that is supposed to climb economically out of this recession, and then for us to educate fewer and fewer students, not because there's a lack of demand, but because we have not enough resources to meet the demand. And that's just and we would be happy to share this with our colleges. And, you know, you try to tell the story of not merely that you need more resources, but what we would accomplish if we could have more resources. So you kind of have to, you know, try to balance that and not come across as a constant whiner, but you have to also say, this is the reality, and if you give us the resources, we'll do the job.
Okay. Vice Chancellor.
I think we have several opportunities to push this out to the public through the public information officers, and also the meeting that you're going to have, Chancellor, on Thursday with Lieutenant Governor Newsom. We can use that as an opportunity to get the word out on this, and also link it to our website. We have key facts that are a big resource for reporters talking about the budget and the trigger cuts, so we can put it out that way.
Thank you. Member McDougall?
Yeah, not to prolong our discussion, but the thing that is so unusual about the present circumstances are the number of consecutive years that these cuts have occurred and what that does to an organization. For the past 20 years or 30 years, there have been bad years that the California community colleges have had. The early 80s, the early 90s, the late 90s. There have been a year or maybe 2 years, but I don't think there has been a period where you're talking about 3 to 4 years consecutively where the system has not been funded adequately and there have been cuts to the ability to do its job. And that is fundamentally different than this system has had to absorbed before, and I think the consequences can be quite severe. Not to say that the sky is falling. I think, as the Chancellor said earlier, the colleges have done a remarkable job of holding together and admitting students. But as is evident from the report, you can do that for a short period, but you can't sustain it.
Okay, and let me remind the board, we do have a couple of people who want to speak. This is our adopted budget. This is the budget that we are recommending and requesting from the legislature and the governor. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Vice President for public comment.
Scott Hamilton, the California Association for Post-Secondary Education and Disability.
Thank you. I am Scott Hamilton. I'm a learning disability specialist and counselor at Cosumnes River College in Sacramento and the immediate past president of CAPED, instead of saying that whole long name, just CAPED. And we represent the disabled students programs and services around the state at all the colleges, the DSPS programs. And I'm pretty happy because this is a different situation for me than usual when I go to a hearing or something like that at the Capitol. Most of the time I'm saying that I disagree with something, but I get to say thank you, and we do agree that restoring funds to the categorical programs, including DSPS, is crucial to student success, not even just student success, but student access. I mean, cuts to DSPS mean blind students don't get Braille, deaf students don't get interpreters. I mean, it's true access to instruction, not just the system, but the information that's provided by the professors and that people try and learn. So CAPED, our organization, is in support of your budget proposals and particularly the restoration theme, not just for DSPS, but also other programs like EOPS, because given given, it's interesting that with budget cuts happening all over the place, there's also the theme that you know about, the push for more student success. Well, programs like DSPS, but also particularly EOPS, that's what they do. They help people be successful who wouldn't be successful. So thank you, and we support the budget that's proposed. Less than 3 minutes.
Jonathan Lightman, in fact.
Good morning. Thank you, President Himmelstein, Vice President Paris, and Chancellor Scott. Jonathan Lightman, on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community College, is also speaking in support of the proposal. I do want to take a quick second to thank Vice Chancellor Troy and Vice Chancellor Skinner, also Teresa Tena, who is not here at this moment, in terms of their tremendous advocacy on the 11-12 budget, and also the yeoman's work at the last minute. We were all rushing between the respective appropriations and budget committees to deal with the fee issue. A couple of points here. We need to look at student fees not just simply from the mechanical perspective that we were able to forestall the increase, but that this does represent a 77% if we're going from $26 to $46 a unit, assuming that these triggers are pulled. This is an enormous increase. And while it is true that we continue to provide the BOG and we continue to provide the Pell, although that's, of course, under discussion in Washington all the time, the impact on the working poor cannot be minimized. And alongside with that, we need to also attend more to the issue of the 670,000 students, which Chancellor Scott referenced in his press conference with Chancellor Reed. In fact, we put out an alert right away, and we said, call your legislators and ask them, what is their plan to restore access to these students? Several years ago, when we helped co-sponsor Proposition 92, we were decrying 305,000 students. We thought that was an enormous number. Now we're discussing 670. That's higher than several states. And we need to make this a centerpiece of our advocacy. Beyond the students, I'd also like to put in a plug for the part-time faculty. They're losing their assignments. And they're living on the margins to begin with, but losing their assignments. And they're told, well, they're public employees, so their jobs, for some reason, are not as valued as that is in the private sector. And we fundamentally disagree. They're the ones that are providing the service to the students that are going to train for the workforce of tomorrow. And that gives us a great theme, as Vice Chancellor Troy said. It's a theme for common advocacy, which is workforce development. Within the scope of this national economy and this national recession, as Governor McDougal said, that it's a sustained period of unemployment, that in California it's 12% and nationally it's 9.1%. But if you look at the national statistics, those with less than a high school education have a 14.3% unemployment rate. High school, it's 9.6. But once you have an associate's degree or some college, it's 8.2. Lower than the national average and several points lower than the California average. And those who have a BA, it's 4.3%. These are the statistics that we need to continually put in front of not only our policymakers, but also the media and our constituents. And with that, we do encourage your support for the BCP. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Congratulations on your promotion.
Okay.
I'll move approval of the
Moved by Member Baum. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member McDougal, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, and I did also want to take a moment to thank the great staff work of Christy Tooma and Diane Brady, who helped prepare the document, and thank you for your kind words about that.
Absolutely.